Just how much Cybertron stuff did the Transformers lose on Earth? Transformers Rise of the Beasts ups that count by 1, and it's brought references and nods along the way. You know what's coming. List of Easter eggs? Roll out! What is a franchise without its catchphrases? Without gratuitous references to family, the Fast and Furious series would just be the adventures of the world's most uninsurable drivers. If we didn't know that Captain America can do this all day, would he be the same?
I can do this all day.
Yeah, I know.
Would we really enjoy the Terminator as much if he didn't tell us whether or not he'd be back? I mean, probably, but they would be less fun.
I'll be back.
With almost 40 years of robots in disguise, there's a few phrases stacked up with the Transformers. Like the one I just said that's part of the original iconic theme. Its companion line, "More Than Meets the Eye," gets a shout out when Mirage and Bumblebee try to convince a skeptical Optimus Prime that humans are alright. The directive to protect the portal device at all costs echoes Optimus' sense of urgency for beating Megatron in the 1986 movie. Another animated movie drop is the statement, "Until all are one," a reflection of the Transformers being a story of transforming robot diaspora with the ultimate goal of reuniting the scattered Cybertronians. Bet you didn't think you'd be getting robot diaspora when you clicked, did ya? This is 2 entries in 1, really. Having started its life as humble animation meant to move some robot toys from Japan on syndicated television, the Transformers have moved on to become a global phenomenon with all the strange juxtapositions that come with it. That means that there are plenty of people from the ranks of voice actors who've lent their voice talents to various characters throughout the series. That includes David Sobolov, whose voice credits for the Transformers date back to the original Beast Wars series as the voice of Depth Charge. For Rise of the Beasts, he voices Rhinox, Battletrap, and Apelink. In the past, he's also voiced Shockwave, Brawl, and Blitzwing. John DiMaggio, best known as the voice of Bender on Futurama, lends his voice to Stratosphere and Transit. Transit's lost clip will be part of the home release as an extra, as is the custom. Michelle Yeoh voices Airraiser, making her the 5th Oscar nominee to voice a Transformers character. Other nominees include Ken Watanabe, who voiced Drift in Age of Extinction, George Coe, who voiced Wheeljack in Dark of the Moon, and Angela Bassett, who voiced Shatter in Bumblebee. Yeoh joins the only other Oscar winner to lend their voice talents, the one and only Orson Welles in his last film role. Sobolov joins some select artists who voice characters in the cartoon who voiced their characters in the film series as well. That includes Frank Welker, who voiced Megatron in both the series and the movies, Ron Perlman, who voiced Optimus Primal in Transformers Power of the Primes and Rise of the Beasts, and of course, the unmistakable Peter Culllen as the voice of Optimus Prime. Cullen's choice to give Optimus a steady, somber tone instead of a shouty one immediately made Optimus Prime the robot father figure we all wanted. If you haven't seen him talk about how he landed on that interpretation, you should check it out. It might bring a bit of a tear to your eye and add so much when you hear that voice again.
My name is Optimus Prime, from the planet Cybertron.
Culllen is so tied to the voice of Optimus that when it came time to give him an articulated robot face, Culllen himself was the inspiration for the look. Optimus wasn't the only one who got a bit of attention in the whole face area. While the different groups of Transformers will sometimes have a recognizable theme, like the Constructicons made up of construction equipment or the Insecticons being, well, insects, it's not always that cut and dry. Autobots tend to be cars, but also dinosaurs. Or jets, or cargo planes. The Decepticons have a front line of fighter jets, but are run by a blaster. Well, in the cartoon, Megatron was a starfighter in the movie series. You gotta have a way to know what team everyone's on, and that's done with badges. Decepticons get one, Autobots get one, and the Terrorcons get one. Namely, the one that goes over their leader Scourge's face. Scourge has done a lot of people conquering and is not quite Herald of Galactus role for Unicron. He likes to keep a record of those he's conquered by removing their badge and decorating himself with it. It's how he celebrates Bumblebee's temporary death and Ape being seemingly more permanent one. Rise of the Beasts was a bit of a mishmash of Beast Wars and the 1986 animated feature, so that means some groups had to make way for others. On Beast Wars, the opponent to the Maximals was the Predicons, but in Rise of the Beasts, it's really a Terrorcon affair. It seems the absence of the Predicons is thanks to Scourge, who is sporting a Predicon badge. For how ultimately random the Transformers' alternate forms are determined, it sort of undermines any notion that it might have any significance. In the cartoon, a probe on the Ark poked out and scanned the first few things it saw and gave the Transformers on board those shapes. For the film series, they've jumped the middleman, and the Transformers themselves, and it can be pretty much anything. With that in mind, liberties have been taken with every evolution of the Transformers, the movies included. Part of this first-class style soft reboot has been a chance to give some of the Transformers their first-generation look, or G1. Bumblebee was a Beetle for one whole movie. Optimus got his original cab-over configuration. But not everyone. Scourge got a new body, and keeping with the Marvel influence, they went with the tried-and-true same versus same. which is to say another semi-truck to take on Prime. But since it's a bad guy semi, they took their cues from the best bad guy semi in all of cinema. And it just so happens to be executive producer Steven Spielberg's first gig. In the movie The Duel, a man trying to pass through the desert in a K-car gets menaced by an unseen driver of a 1955 Peterbilt 281. Scourge's semi-mode was patterned after that truck. Everyone has to have a gimmick, and Mirage's gimmick, as you can guess, is to create hologram illusions, usually of himself. If you were a rare 1993 Porsche 911 RS 3.8, you would too. Only 55 examples were made to comply with production requirements for sports car racing, a process called homologation. Essentially, a company makes a race car and puts license plates on it, makes a token amount, and then goes production car racing. Mirage's Porsche Visage takes the place of Jazz, who was a Plymouth Solstice in the first movie, but Jackie Ick's number 4 Porsche 935 race car. If you're going to be a robot in disguise, having your disguise be a one-of-one race car probably wasn't the best choice. It was still better than Mirage's first form, a Ligier JS11 Formula 1 race car from 1980. Mirage also appeared under the moniker Dino for Revenge of the Fallen and Dark of the Moon as a Ferrari. Both those forms get a shout out when Mirage cycles through the forms Noah can sell if he helps Mirage get home. Bumblebee may no longer be a VW Beetle, but that doesn't mean the Transformers were done with air-cooled VWs. Wheeljack showed up with Arcee's color scheme with a Volkswagen bus as his other form. VW buses are always a canvas for their owners to make of them what you will, but Wheeljack, being who he is, took that a step further and created a bus that doesn't exist. First generation buses have that iconic diving V design on the front and a split window, which is to say that the windshield is split into 2 windows. Wouldn't that obscure the vision of the driver? Someone I'm sure asked. Well, the DMV agreed, and so the second generation bus did away with the split window and the V design. These were nicknamed bay windows, with the previous generation being split window buses. Wheeljack apparently wanted the look of the first generation buses, but the visibility and size of the bay window buses because his front fascia is a combination of both versions. When you start hanging out with giant transforming robots who have been locked in an eternal battle with other giant transforming robots that has not only ravaged their planet but the planets of others, you might start to feel pretty vulnerable. When the going got rough, Mirage hooked up his own Iron Man style suit to win the day. The suit echoes one that Sam Witwicky got in the animated movie. It also echoes the power suits in the first live-action G.I. Joe movie. Hasbro wants a shared reality between its 2 toy lines, but it's not clear if they're going to want to acknowledge the rise of Cobra at all. Generally speaking, Optimus Prime is a bastion of level-headedness and one to give second chances, but in the movies, he's had a hard time adjusting to humans. Rise of the Beasts finds Prime before he's had any meaningful interaction with humans, feeding his general distrust. Advocating for the humans with Mirage was Bumblebee. Prime dismissed his rebuttal about a human that was nice to be. That, of course, refers to Charlie from the Bumblebee movie that set the stage for this soft reboot. Part of what was making Optimus grumpy in the first place was that they were stranded on Earth and he was pretty sure it was his fault, dooming his fellow Autobots to Decepticon rule. It's what adds an extra layer of urgency to the proceedings. With the movie set in 1994, Prime refers to his 7 years on this planet. That would mean, depending on what time of year it was, the movie Transformers arrived on Earth around the same time as the Transformers movie. There were more than a few nods to the original movie, some more direct than others, with Unicron getting his Galactus on, rewriting a previous entry that suggested that the reason Earth was so special was because it had a dormant Unicron in it. The big bad behind the big bad needed a big bad theme song. Fortunately, he already had one from the animated film, so the film used that melody from the original score. 2023 will go down as the year action movies remind Mark Wahlberg that he had a career before acting, and we're only kinda talking about when he was an underwear model. Earlier this year, Dom's brother Jacob hipped Little B to the good vibrations of a time when Mark Wahlberg went by Marky Mark in Fast X. In Rise of the Beasts, Mirage introduces the same song to Noah, remarking that Marky Mark was giving up the Marky and going into acting. It would be a successful transition, as Wahlberg went on to portray Cade Yeager in 2 Transformers movies. If you've never watched Beast Wars, you might ask yourself, wait, why do the Maximals need to transform into animals? They're not wildly convincing animals. Who is that disguise for? Well, and we cover most of this in our Ending Explained video, it turns out when Primal says that line about the past and future, it's because Primal is both. The Maximals were descendants of the Autobots who landed on an energon-rich planet that caused them to need a meat shield to temper absorption of the otherwise life-giving energy. This came back around when the Maximals were tucked away in Peru on a rich deposit of inert energon that, when activated, revives Bumblebee. Reek might seem like a weird name for Noah's best friend, unless Noah also tortures and torments his buddy like Ramsay Snow. But it's just a shortened version of the name Tariq, and it's a name that means a lot to director Stephen Caple Jr. Early in his career, Caple had a creative relationship with Tariq Reek Jackson. Tariq Jackson passed in 2020, with a tribute to him included in the credits and the characters' names. Trying to make a shared Hasbro universe isn't the way to go. If they want to share a universe with another franchise, the choice is obvious: the Fast and the Furious franchise. High-octane heists by a team that considers itself a family, driving cars that also consider each other family? Box office gold.